First on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. Will those who are able please rise and join us for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible.
Supervisor Hendrickson. Here. Clerk Demas here. Treasurer Burkhardt. Here. Trustee Lentz. Here. Trustee Sunland. Trustee Trezise. Here. Trustee Wilson. Here. 7 board members present.
Thank you very much. Nice to have a full roster again. Next on our agenda this evening is presentations. We have none. And so that brings us to item 5 on our agenda, citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. There are several opportunities for public comment at tonight's meeting. Members of the public who wish to address our agenda or any item not on our agenda may do so now at the beginning of the meeting as well as near the end of the meeting. Those who wish to address the board must complete a green card, which is located on the table near the door, and present the card to the board or a member of the staff prior to their public comment. When it's your turn, I'll call you up to the podium to speak to the topics indicated, and while it's not required, it is helpful for our township staff to provide your name and address for the meeting minutes at the beginning of your remarks. Citizens are required to limit comments to 3 minutes. An automated system will keep track of the time, and an audible beep will alert you when your time has expired. Members of the board do value public comment and input. And the meeting format and rules, however, do restrict board members from engaging in conversation with commenters or answering questions directly. Questions and concerns may be addressed by board members at a later time or may be referred to a member of the township staff to follow up on. Please remember to address all comments to the board and or the board's chair and not to individual board members or others in the audience. With that said, we have 2 green cards this evening. First up is Christina Clock, and then David Clock is on deck.
Christina Clock speaking in opposition of the FEDOA SUP. The master plan update in 2023 was implemented in a manner inconsistent with the Michigan Planning Act and the equal protection of clause of both the Michigan and U.S. constitutions. Specifically, the notice procedures applied to impacted properties was unequal, depriving landowners of a fair opportunity to participate. Why was it unequal? The township provided individualized notice to landowners affected by changes in the urban services boundary. No individual notice was provided to landowners affected by changes to the future land use map involving the FEDOA Faith Lutheran property. Both changes were part of the same master plan update and considered during the same public process. Although the Michigan Planning Act does not require individualized notice for master plan amendments, once the township chose to provide such notice for one type of amendment, it was obligated to apply that procedure fairly and consistently. Case law and the courts clearly support this principle. The discretionary outreach by Meridian Township staff triggered an obligation to provide notice fairly, equitably, and consistently to all impacted landowners, which it did not. Leaving one group out of the master plan process is contrary to the principles of due process and equal protection. When a governmental entity voluntarily offers notice beyond a legal minimum, they must do so fairly and consistently or risk a violation of a landowner's constitutional right to due process. When due process is violated, the master plan must go back to the Planning Commission for amendment and all zoning arising from it considered procedurally invalid. Beyond this argument, there are multiple fallacies in the SUP, including but not limited to number 3. The project is not designed to be harmonious in appearance with the existing character of the vicinity. Nothing on any direct side of this development is 3 stories. There is no visual harmony here. Not to mention the development's only driveway hits a home on Seneca smack in the middle. Having headlights hit your home at all hours of the day and night is not harmonious with the character of the neighborhood, nor is looking directly at a dumpster. Number 5, the project will be detrimental to the economic welfare of surrounding properties. The economic loss on property values is huge. Also, please read your own township engineer's memo, which has been left out of your packet tonight. Not only is over 4 acres of wooded land being raised for this development, but even more forested land will need to be destroyed behind the church for the sewage and drain connections required, and whose property will be destroyed for the sewer connections. This SUP should be denied and the master plan reopened in the interest of both moral and legal integrity. Thank you.
Thank you. David Clock, and then I have no other green cards. If anyone else wishes to address the board at this time, please make sure that you fill out a green card and hand it to a member of our staff.
Thank you. Hey, I was gonna hand something out. Do I hand that to,
We hand it to Manager Dempsey.
there's just something I thought should be in your packet that was not in there. And there were some good comments. Dave Clock, 4538 Seneca in Okemos. Wanted to draw attention again to the water issues. And I've been quoting and mentioning things along this process during the planning commission and also at the township board votes in the past. But there's an item in there too from your own engineer about the water issues. In the back left west part of the property will be filled, in essence, raising the back west part of the property. So again, comments from your own engineer said that that will potentially impede the backyard runoff from adjacent homes with potential ponding and potential additional flow into the neighbors' yards. So again, what's gonna happen is none of the water that's in our yard can drain other than just sit in our yard, and all the water that would be in that western part of the property would flow into our yard. So again, please consider the water issues. We've been mentioning that along the way. It's a concern of ours. There's other issues with that was in your packet, but I only have 3 minutes to speak, so I just wanted to bring that one issue up. And I didn't see it in your packet today, so we printed copies. I want to make sure you received that. So please take into consideration comments from your own engineer. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wishing to address the board at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed at 6:07 PM. Next on our agenda is item 6, the Township Manager Report. Manager Dempsey.
Yes, thank you Supervisor Hendrickson, and good evening, board members. A few things tonight. The first one is the summary of the listening session from September has been completed. That was posted online last Wednesday. So if residents are interested in reading that, they can get access to that. The next board listening session and final one for the year will be on Thursday, November 13th at 242 Community Center, which is at 630 Bennett Road. So we encourage residents to attend if they haven't, especially if they haven't been able to attend the other ones. And of course, if they did and want to attend this as well, they're welcome to join us all. Just a reminder for residents, we've had a very long stretch of dry weather. And now that we have wet weather coming back, for people that might have catch basins on their streets, for those with curb and gutter, for those with ditches, just to keep those clear. If they see it clogged up, it doesn't take much sometimes to just take a rake over and clear that, because we do get a lot of ponding sometimes. And certainly if there's more significant concerns, they can contact the Ingham County Drain Commission for more significant maintenance. And then we have a host of events coming up here as we round out October. So this Friday is the Great Divide. This is the annual event where our fire department takes on the East Lansing Fire Department and literally cutting a couple vehicles in half in a race to do that. That'll be at Home Depot on Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and the cutting event around 1 p.m. There'll also be some other activities going there and free hot dogs, so hope to see people out for that. And then our police department is hosting their open house this Saturday for Halloween. That'll be 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. right here, 5151 Marsh Road, across our campus in the Public Safety Building. So again, encourage residents with little ones to come for that. And then the last one is the third and final sort of Halloween related event is October 30th at Marketplace on the Green is the Spooktacular event. That's 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. There's a small fee for that, but a lot more information online for all of our events. So with that, that covers it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions for Manager Dempsey on his report? Well, as the father of a couple of little ones, I can tell you that the events around Halloween are some of the favorites for our family that the township puts on. And my one and only mugshot was taken at our first foray into this a couple of years ago in costume. So I'm sure there's a picture floating around there somewhere. So make sure you stop by if you get a chance. Seeing no other questions, it takes us to item 7 on our agenda, board member reports of activities and announcements. Any board members with activities and announcements to report? Trustee Wilson.
The Community Resource Commission, which aids our low-income residents, met last week on Wednesday. And thanks to the efforts of Katie Love, our human resource specialist that works with this population, we have raised $11,500 to provide holiday baskets for our low-income families, which is pretty darn remarkable. And thanks to everyone who contributed toward that and a lot of our businesses that are in the local area. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Demas.
Yeah, I just want to say congratulations to our newest board member, Treasurer Linda Burkhart. I swore her into office. We also had a swearing-in ceremony prior to this meeting where the board was in attendance. So that's it.
Thank you. Trustee Lentz.
Yeah, thank you. As the representative from this board on the Ingham County chapter of the Michigan Township Association, I wanted to let everyone know that unfortunately the president of the MTA, Harold Koviak, supervisor of Burt Township, passed away on Saturday. And, while sad as any losses, I was lucky enough to meet him and interact with him at our conference in March and April. And I think the MTA was better for his service, so I wanted to let his family know that we in Meridian are thinking about him. Excuse my tickle.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other board members? All right, seeing none, we move on to our next item, which is agenda item 8, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda this evening? Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the agenda.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Trustee Trezise seconds. Any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Next on our agenda is item 9, our consent agenda. This evening, we have a number of items on our consent agenda, including communications with the Township Board, 3 sets of minutes, the minutes from our October 7th special Township Board meeting, our October 7th regular Township Board meeting, and board members at our places, we have the closed session minutes from October 7th as well. We also have the bills, a contract award for the Forest Hills Lift Station replacement and White Hills Lift Station bypass, and the AT&T IP Flex renewal and upgrade contracts. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda this evening? Trustee Wilson.
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, it's been moved by Trustee Wilson. Do we have a support? Supported by Treasurer Burkhart. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Trustee Lenz.
All I would like to say is, as someone who serves on the Elmswell board for Meridian Township, I would encourage any township residents who has questions about their water and sewer to review that presentation on the annual highlights report, which is a part of that consent agenda. I think it provides a lot of clear information about the great water quality that we have here in Meridian and the steps that Elmswell puts into ensuring that with your water and sewer dollars raised.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Seeing none, will Clerk Demas please call the roll?
Clerk Demas, yes. Treasurer Burkhart?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. All right, okay, next on our agenda is item 10, action items. We have no action items this evening.
Could I ask to have all the closed sessions?
Yes, if you could please pass those back to Clerk Demas, that would be appreciated.
Thank you.
All right. We have no action items this evening for item 10. So that brings us to item 11A, the Township Manager Review Process. And this one is mine to present. So last year, as you may recall, this board passed an update to our process for the annual review for the Township Manager. The lion's share of the changes of that process included incorporating a stricter timeline by which we complete the process, as well as incorporating our employees' feedback as a part of the 360 review process. So that process began about a month ago when our HR director, Director Titoff, brought me a anonymized list of employee numbers to select from, and several employees from each of our labor unions and other groups, including boards and commissions and non-union workers, were selected. I do not know who they are. Only Director Titoff knows who they are. Those folks were reached out to with the standard form that we passed last year. They completed that form, if they desired to, and returned it to Director Titoff. Director Titoff provided those responses to me. I have collated them, and I have prepared this memo to go along with them to present to you all. Included in the packet this evening are the two reviews that came back. Please note that while 15 were sent out, only 2 employees chose to respond to the survey. Their answers in full are provided. There are also narrative answers at the end of each review, so you're welcome to peruse those and use those as a part of your review as well. Finally, at the end of that packet piece is the blank Township Manager Performance Evaluation form that we are to use in the process of evaluating the Township Manager. If you need a hard copy, you can reach out to Director Titoff. She should be able to provide those to you as well. But essentially, what we're going to ask everyone to do, per the timeline that's in our policy, is to please take the blank employee review, manager review form, I should say, fill it out, and return it via email to both Director Titoff and myself by November 1st. In our hands by November 1st, if you would, please. What will happen after that is I will take the responses. I will not alter them. They will be presented in full. And I will draft an executive summary as well as the memo to go with this. We will see those at our first meeting in November. So part of the reason why I'm stressing getting it to us by the 1st is because our meeting is on the 6th. And so there's very little time to collate and create an executive summary. Once that's all done, we'll have it on for discussion and then finally approval by our second meeting in November. Any questions on the policy or the procedure thus far? Does everyone feel as though the November 1st deadline is accomplishable?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Very good. Then this serves as our opening discussion into the manager review process. Please feel free to take a look at the documentation that was submitted, and I will look forward to receiving your reviews. Yes?
This does not appear to be a fillable form. Is that correct?
If it isn't, then we can certainly get you one.
Can we do that? Because it's also incorporated into the entire packet.
Yeah.
It'd be great if we could just get a
Yep,
scanned
we'll have that out to you
document.
via email, probably tomorrow, I would
Great,
guess.
thank you.
Just adding on to
Yes.
that, I think it's not fillable just because it's in the packet, but I'm sure there is a version that is.
I know-
I'm sure there is too.
I know that there is a fillable version of of it. I don't know that I have it necessarily at the top of my inbox.
Sure.
So I'd send it to you right now. Thank you very much. All right, seeing no further discussion on this item, we'll go to item 11B, a special use permit number 2521, St. Martha's Parish and School, 1100 West Grand River, addition to a building over 25,000 feet. And to discuss this, we have Director Tim Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Pull up the plans here real quick if I can. There we go, give you a sense of where we're at here. And so this is, as everyone's aware, St. Martha's Church, far eastern end, not quite the eastern end of the township, but far east end of the township, actually out where we would consider outside of the urban service boundary, north side of Grand River Avenue. And so the church and school have been there for many years, and what they are looking for at this point is an addition in this area. on the northwest-ish corner. It's kind of hard, it's not a square building. So imagine, if you will, it's the northwest corner. Classrooms to expand the school. The building itself is obviously larger than 25,000 square feet, so it has an existing special use permit and series of expansions over the years that have been amended by the Planning Commission and the board. And this is no different than those requests. It's a two-story, 11,000 square foot expansion to the existing building, classrooms, lab space, storage, the typical things you would see with a school. Planning Commission held a public hearing on September 22nd, had no input, but had a good discussion about it, and then ultimately did recommend approval at their October 13th meeting by a 6-0 vote. And so the request is in front of you this evening to discuss the expansion of the building as it relates to the size. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is here this evening.
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions or discussion at this time? Trustee Wilson.
This property has water and sewer on it, doesn't it?
Well, it does have sewer because it's on a private force main. I believe it has water. Deputy Manager does? Thank you very much.
Okay, that's what I thought. I recalled that from the 1990s.
I was pretty sure.
Okay. This seems like it's obviously the appropriate use. The parcel is 18 acres, so it's a very large parcel.
It is.
It's not encroaching on any of the property lines. Seems like a logical approach to me.
Thank you very much. Other comments or discussion? Seems like a pretty straightforward expansion. As was discussed, it does definitely conform with the current uses that it's being used for, this being an expansion of that use. And given that it has limited impact on the surrounding area, it doesn't have any negative impacts that I can see out of this. I see no reason to say no, to overturn the Planning Commission's recommendation to approve this SUP. Other board members with discussion at this time? Seeing none. We'll see you back here, I suppose.
We will be back at the next meeting with final action.
Okay. Thank you very much. I see you not walking away. That's because agenda item 11C comes up next. Special use permit number 2520, Fedewa Holdings, 4601 Dobie Road. Construct a series of buildings larger than 25,000 square feet.
Oh, that's the way this mouse is sensitive. Thank you. And so the request in front of you this evening is for this vacant piece of property right here located directly to the south of Chief Okemos Circle and the apartments there to the north of Faith Lutheran Church on Dobie Road. It's currently vacant property, has never been built on. And you may recall that this was previously approved for rezoning, a conditional rezoning in March of this year, subject to two conditions: that the increased rear yard setback off the western boundary go from 40 feet to 100 feet, and the type of units be restricted to 4 townhome-style buildings with 8 units per building. And so the request in front of you is a discussion of the size, because again, this in total, these 4 buildings exceed 25,000 square feet, which is what brings it to the board this evening. We still have, there's still extensive review that has to be done, as with any project. This is not the site plan review. This is just the sort of the massing review, if you will, as it relates to the conditions of special use permit approval for buildings greater than 25,000 square feet. So we will continue to review things such as drainage, such as the water and sewer connections. I think one of the things that was being talked about was sort of this connection right here. There is a right-of-way that exists right here, has a storm sewer in it. I believe the sanitary is just on the edge of it. So that's where the most likely connections will be for utilities, but that still has to be determined. As you can see in your packet, we really don't have all of the details at this point, nor would we expect to. This is the special use permit review stage, the next stage, which is the technical review occurs administratively with staff. And so we will address the matters that were brought up. I will point out that part of the reason that our engineer mentioned the drainage is because all of the water coming from the neighbors on Seneca Drive will no longer be able to come onto this property once it's developed. And so there will likely be some ponding as a result of their sump pumps and their downspouts now staying on their property. But the Planning Commission has reviewed this and held a public hearing on the 22nd of September, had extensive comment from the public, and then ultimately recommended approval at their follow-up meeting in October I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the date all of a sudden, but the last week.
13th?
Thank you. Largely for, it is in compliance with the master plan. The buildings to the north are multi-story apartment buildings. Building to the south is a church, multi-story building. Although it doesn't necessarily blend in with the neighborhood, to the west, it's, buffered from that neighborhood by the natural area it's being set back, and it's fronting on Dobie Road, which is a collector street in the township. And so they did recommend approval of the request. I'd be happy to answer any questions, and I know the applicant is here this evening to address things as well.
Thank you very much. Since you mentioned the topic of water, I think it might be helpful to go over a couple of questions stemming from both what you just stated and also what was listed in this memorandum from Engineer Israedi. So to be clear, the properties on Seneca currently drain onto this property, the subject property.
So we don't have full engineering yet, but the expectation is yes, they do, because everything drains sort of towards the property line there, in between the Seneca properties and the Dobie Road properties.
And you'd look at topography and whatnot to verify all of that?
Absolutely. Once we have full topography, we will review that.
Okay. And so the water that could pond, according to this memo on there, would theoretically be from their properties, not the subject property.
Yeah, and so they've actually, correct, this, to the FEDO's credit, they have gone beyond what we would normally see at the special use permit review. And as you can see in your packet on page 425, they have actually done detention pond calcs already, which we normally wouldn't see. And they have, nearly 5,000 cubic feet of storage space beyond what's required for the 100-year volume of storm on the site. And so they are detaining a substantial amount of water on the site, and then it would discharge through a pipe out to the stub street that I mentioned. I believe it's Oneida Drive, that stubs right here. There's a catch basin right back here that they would connect into the drain in Oneida and Seneca.
Okay.
All of which obviously has to be reviewed by the Ingham County Drain Commissioner's office
Thank
before
you.
anything happens.
That was what I was going to ask next.
Yeah.
So this project has not yet been vetted and reviewed by the Ingham County Drain Office. Is that accurate?
Correct, nor would any project be at this stage.
And would you say the Drain Office is generally permissive of projects and plans that do not capture their own water?
The Drain Commissioner has a substantial set of rules that require virtually every drop of water to stay on site.
Okay. And so things like the capacity of the drain the Sprouse drain that they're considering connecting to the west would be one of those considerations.
Absolutely.
And I'm not asking you to speak for the Drain Commissioner, but your estimation of your experience working with him would be that if this plan that was submitted did not in some way address the overflow water from this parcel, that would likely be denied?
It will not get approved if it does not meet their standards.
Okay.
I'm fairly confident in speaking for them in that regard.
Okay. Fair enough. I also had a question. You said the developer is here. The residents had expressed some concern during their public comment this evening about the light pollution coming down the street into their backyard. Perhaps the applicant could address what screening would be in place as a part of this project on the west side of their property. And, what steps could be taken or planned to be taken to address the light pollution that could be potentially coming in as a result of this development.
So,
Let me talk to this too.
you know, you start us off, is this the screen so we can show what's going on, or
No.
do you want to speak to it, or?
Yes.
The mouse controls the screen.
Yes, good evening, board members. My name is Jerry Fedewa, 6099 East Lake Drive, Hazlet.
And I'm David Fedewa, 278 Hazlet Road.
Regarding the issue with the light pollution with the road, what will happen is about the most westerly 50 feet, this is very, very wooded area. And we are not planning to cut down any trees there. We're not planning to change the contour at all. It is what it is. We moved our detention to the front of the building along on the, you'll see it in the front of the building. You gotta go, there you go. Goes around there on that side and also goes around on the south side. And so our intent is, if you go to the back again there, David, from that little blue squiggly line further to the west, we're not planning to change the contours. It is a natural area. It's very heavily wooded. You will not really see or be able to see the cars and be able to, because of the screening, that's natural screening. It's very wooded. It's very wooded. And we're not going to change that contour. We're not cutting the trees. We're not building any detention back there. It's all being left natural. So that in and of itself is quite a screen between their properties and our potential property.
Thank you.
And also, we can put fencing along the back there, like a privacy fence, if we see that as needed.
Please.
If we see that as needed.
No, it would be part of the requirement. If you find that, if you visit, you'll see there probably isn't necessary to put a fence there. If you find that it's, if you go there and you look, and administratively, if they decide that a fence, you can't really put a fence along the property line because you'd have to meander the fence because of all the trees that are there.
I think, I appreciate the willingness to consider that if administratively it's required. I would imagine that it would not be necessary at the property line, but more likely at the edge of the driveway. If at all, I'm guessing. I think typically, and Director Schmidt can non-verbally show me if you'd like, typically we request interwoven trees of some kind when we look for screening for a project like this.
That would seem more appropriate in this event.
Okay. The other thing that they mentioned that in their public comment was visibility of a dumpster. Now, I'm looking at this page that you're also on here. It appears as though the dumpster's on the far east end of the property, up on the road. Is that more or less where this is anticipated to be?
So we've had some discussions on different locations for it. And so, we're open. We've had a couple of discussions on having it towards the back of the property, and also up at the front. And so we do have some flexibility in that and are open to kind of figuring out how we can all work together.
Sure. And I suspect from a, curb appeal standpoint, it would be better at the back of the property. However, I would expect that it would likely necessitate some more screening for the very concerns that the residents raised. So I'm
And
sure.
the other concern is all the people in the front, the buildings are 200 feet. So if the dumpsters are all the way to the front, you're walking over 400 feet to get to the dumpster. So we thought maybe something in the middle. We have to make sure it's accessible for the Granger people so they can access. So we're flexible on where that can be, but we're just trying to make it user-friendly for both Granger and the occupants.
And so then theoretically, I mean, I'm not expecting a garbage truck to be turning around in driveways. They would go to the back of the property as if they were an emergency vehicle that the back driveway was built for, turn around there and then leave.
Yes,
Yep.
correct.
And that's one of the ideas we had for putting the dumpster at the back, was that they would be able to use the fire truck turnaround to get facing forward coming out.
And if that they were in the back, we would have a fence around the back side of it, so it wouldn't be able to be seen from the west.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a pause and may come back to you in a little bit, but I'll let my colleagues ask some questions now.
Okay, perfect,
Other
thank you.
board members? Trustee Lentz.
Thank you. I see here on page 433 of the packet, Mark's Wetland conducted a wetland evaluation report. Have they done projects for you in Meridian Township before?
Yes.
I'm not sure if that's for you or for Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, no, this is something I can speak to. Mark's is pretty well respected in the region. We see them pretty regularly, especially given that we, at the time, utilized the other local consultant. So Mark's became sort of the consultant for the developers, and we hired the other consultant who's now Fishback. But yeah, they do good work. I'm happy with Mark's.
Thank you. The follow-up to that is with the process as you and the supervisor have laid out for the Drain Commission office, is this taken at face value, or do they do their own evaluation on top of this wetland evaluation when determining what water goes where?
Yeah, so the Drain Commissioner office typically doesn't get involved with wetland regulation. It's us and the state that handle those. In this case, obviously nothing greater than 2 acres, so the state won't get involved here. This is really just gonna be a matter for us, and we will discuss it with our consultant, should this move forward. Ultimately, given that it's a wetland in an area that is not being touched, we don't see any wetland impacts arising as a result of this project.
Thank you.
Other board members? Trustee Wilson.
Regarding the 2 retention areas that you have to plan, that you are intending on planning, Tim, can I ask you this question? So I understand they're greater than what is required. Can you explain to me, are these going to be natural areas, and which way will these 2 retention areas drain?
Yeah, so.
Because they're on the front of the property.
They're not gonna necessarily be natural in that they're dug out, right? These are contour lines going down, so they're at least going down about 4 or 5 feet there. You can see here, not to get too far into the weeds, but sort of the corners, these are outlets, runs into a pipe that comes under here, picks up another outlet, runs back this way, turns and goes south onto the Faith Lutheran property, which they'll need an easement for, and then connects into Spross Drain back here in the sub-street of Oneida.
So it's all going to flow west?
Yes.
Okay, that's the idea. So talk about that easement that they're going to have to acquire from the adjacent property owner, Faith Lutheran.
Yeah, I do not believe that pipe exists, so they'll need an easement to put that pipe in the ground, basically.
Okay,
Relatively common process with development on infill sites when you're trying to get to a drain connection or a sanitary connection.
okay. One of the concerns that have been brought up in some of the correspondence that we've had is the Faith Lutheran driveway, the north driveway. So can you just show us how that's going to work? Because I understand they're going to take out the existing drive and move it closer to the church.
Yeah, so this is the proposal.
Where is it now?
The dotted line.
Through the wetland.
There's a dotted line.
Through the
Yeah,
detention.
it's hard to see. There's a
Okay.
dotted, it's right about here.
Gotcha, okay.
Is where the existing was is. So essentially, they're splitting the bathwater there and putting the development to the north, development driveway to the north and the Faith Lutheran driveway to the south. Again, also subject to county approval, as the county road department is the approving agency for anything related to Dobie Road.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Other board members with questions? Clerk Demas.
I know one of the concerns that residents had was about traffic, and just reviewing the packet materials, I see that, a full traffic impact study, this did not meet the requirements to conduct one, but, Director Schmidt, if you wouldn't mind just discussing the study that we have in front of us and how traffic will be impacted, if you could provide more details.
Yeah, so as you mentioned correctly, the proposed development does not meet the standards for a full traffic impact study. That's not to say that the county won't require one, because we have had situations where our standards only required an assessment and the county standards required a full study. So not to say one won't be done, but essentially what they are showing is that under the proposed rezoning, or the proposed development, so essentially this is the traffic study that we got with the rezoning as well, because it was a conditional rezoning, we knew exactly what they were doing. They were able to hone their rezoning study in on exactly what the proposal would be. What it shows is that the queue time in the evening would increase by very slight amounts, 1.2 seconds over an existing level of service for residential, the old zoning. And in the yeah, that is actually the major delay, is the eastbound turning north at that sign. So it's a 1.2 second delay that drops it from what would be a level of service B to a level of service C. Level of service C is still an acceptable level of service. Generally, you're looking for an A, B, or C. Once you get into a D, you start to have a problem. The long and the short of it is the comparison to the previous zoning and what's being proposed now, 32 dwelling units, would add a total weekday volume in 24 hours of 158 trips. Peak hour, you're looking at a total of 24 in the morning and 23 at night. So less than one trip per unit.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you
Absolutely.
walking us through this. I think this is something still to consider, and if there is a full traffic impact study, I hope that we can all discuss it.
To that point, if the road department required a traffic study, it would be during site plan review.
Correct.
Not, so it would be after the board makes the final decision.
Correct. At that point, it's an administrative function of what the road department would theoretically need to see, either to approve the project or to recommend modifications to the right-of-way to make the project acceptable. But, a 1.2 second reduction is not a lot.
And to be clear, you said it was eastbound on a north turn.
Turning,
So that's
so it's
coming-
coming out, turning left.
So essentially what they're saying, based on the letter grade system that they use, their contention is that there will be no impact on north and southbound Dobie. The impact is fully on those cars coming out of the site itself.
Yeah, because there's not another intersection that this directly impacts, right? But you could certainly make an argument, and probably the argument that will be discussed with the road department will be, how does it impact the Hamilton intersection? But for a project of this size, you're really only looking at the site driveway and what that does on a pre and post development, or in this case, a single family versus a multifamily development basis.
And if they were to consider a full traffic study at the road department level, that would study the impact likelier than not on, say, Hamilton and Dobie.
Yeah, no, I mean, in theory, you're looking at Hamilton and Dobie, and you're looking at Grand River and Dobie as well. You're probably also looking at Hamilton and Grand River, given the proximity to the intersection, because they usually look in a certain distance. Now,
Would they go south to like Hatch or Seneca?
no, that's,
Or not Seneca,
Forest Hills Drive.
yeah, thank you.
probably Forest Hills. you're getting into the nuance and the dark arts of traffic studies that I don't know as well as maybe I should, but a full study though does get into that stuff. It looks at surrounding intersections, it looks at broader background growths on surrounding roads. This project just isn't big enough to trigger that from our perspective.
Got it. Thank you. Other questions? I don't see anyone jumping to their feet with questions. Anything further that you need from us this evening?
No, so we can follow up and we'll get I'll reach out to the road department and see if we can get some clarity on what they might look for, just so we can further discuss that. I would also follow up and tell you pretty unequivocally that the dumpster is going to get moved. It's not approvable under our current ordinances, so it's just not something that we need to deal with at this point, staff-wise, so it didn't even come up. But I can say with some certainty that it does not meet our ordinance right now. So that'll get moved. But we will follow up at the next meeting on a couple items that we discussed, and if anything else that comes up, obviously.
I'm sorry, I did have one more.
Yeah, please.
The buildings being 3 stories, that is compliant or is not compliant with the zoning that it's currently in?
Yeah, so we're gonna need some additional detail on that. The ordinance permits 2.5 stories or 35 feet. Keyword being or. And so we need to have some additional information on that before we make a determination.
Okay. And the buildings at Chief Okemos Circle to the north are how tall?
I will have to follow up on that.
Okay.
Because there's a mix, actually, because some of those were built years ago and some of them were just built 4 years ago.
Okay. Arrow Tree is across the way too?
Generally 2 stories, but some of those buildings have story below ground, pretty typical 70s construction, got you around fire code requirements by burying a level.
Okay.
So some of those are actually 3 stories, but underground.
Fascinating. Okay, yeah, that'd be good to follow up on too.
Absolutely.
Trustee Wilson?
One more. Ingham County Drain Commission, do they ever look at this preliminarily?
We have never been very successful in getting preliminary comments.
Okay, because that I think is where the real issue is going to be, is how the drainage is going to work, how it's going to connect to the Sprouse drain,
Absolutely.
those sorts of details.
Yeah, that is typically not something that comes up in a special use permit review.
Great.
Cool. All right. Any other discussion? We'll see you back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, item 11D, Hagedorn Road land donation. We have for this one, our Deputy Township Manager, Dan Opsmer.
Good evening, Supervisor Hendrickson and board members. So tonight, we have before you the prospect of acquiring some land on Hagedorn Road. So the owners of these properties recently approached the township because they are interested in making a donation. So the subject properties are on Hagedorn Road, south of Mount Hope Road. Just a second here, the packet length is making it difficult to put exactly what I want on the screen. There we go. Okay, so the subject properties are on the east side of Hagedorn Road, south of Mount Hope Road, and just south of the CSX railroad tracks. Outlined in yellow would be the portions of the 2 parcels that the township would be acquiring. Roughly, we're still speaking to the property owners on exactly how they would propose to split 4344 Hagedorn Road, which is this rectangular parcel right here. But for purposes of the discussion this evening, we've given you a rough outline of what we expect that parcel split to look like. So for background, the property owners are interested in making this donation prior to the start of the new calendar year, 2026, due to the tax benefits that they would receive based on changes to the tax code. So ordinarily, we would send this through the land acquisition process for land preservation. However, that timeline would put us well past January 1st of 2026. So in the interest of considering this acquisition, we are pursuing it right now as a pathway acquisition. We have not historically done that, but that's a way to get directly to the board and consider this in advance of the calendar year. We are currently conducting the Phase 2 ESA, or environmental assessment, on the site. The Phase 1 did find the possibility of a fuel tank at 4344, because there is a gap between when the home was connected to natural gas and when it was first placed on that subject site. So at this time, we are still waiting on the outcomes and findings of the Phase 2 ESA, and we will bring that back to the board at your meeting probably on November 18th. Our primary interest, at least in Public Works and Engineering, on acquiring the property is the prospect of connecting the Heron Creek, Sundance Estates, and Champion Woods, and also the Silverleaf neighborhood, which is currently being developed right here, to the existing pathway on the east side of Hagedorn Road. So these 4 neighborhoods could have an off-road trail connecting them as is proposed in the pathway master plan. And these 2 parcels would give us that ability. One other thing that we have discussed with the property owners is securing an easement over and across the land. And I'll go down to our attachment to your cover memorandum. So the property owners have agreed to split the northern parcel right here. And so we would have enough land to have a boardwalk terminate approximately where my cursor is. From there, we would still need a route and course to connect to the pathway. And so the pink or purple hash there is the route and course of the easement that we have proposed, and the property owners are willing to grant the township an easement as part of this. So we would have the full route and course available to us if and when we have the funding to construct this off-road trail. So more or less, we would have a contiguous route and course to construct the trail when the township is prepared to do so. And then lastly, I will leave you with, long-term for the land. We've discussed 2 options internally. No decisions have been made, but long-term, it could become part of the land preservation program, or alternatively, it could be land that we donate to the drain office. The Heron Creek drain does run along the eastern boundary of the southern parcel. So this black line right here is the Heron Creek drain. It's an open ditch drain. And then it cuts through the northern parcel northeasterly right here. So the subject property is already, during heavy rain events, doing some stormwater detention when the drain, raises over the berm of the ditch. So there's really 2 prospects for the land long-term, whether that be land preservation or a donation to the Ingham County Drain Commissioner's Office. So those are the discussions thus far at the staff level. Our purpose tonight is just to get initial feedback from the board on whether or not you would like to pursue this acquisition.
Thank you very much. Board members, questions? Trustee Trezise.
This is what, 90% wetlands now?
Yeah, pretty much. I can pull up the wetland viewer.
Well, it's delineated here in the green anyway.
Yeah. We didn't delineate the southern parcel. We only delineated the wetlands on the northern parcel for purposes of deciding where the parcel split would occur.
Sure.
So the southern parcel, but you do see the 100-year floodplain. Let me zoom out just a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
The southern parcel does have, it's pretty much covered in wetlands east of the red line here,
Right.
which is the 100-year floodplain. So pretty much consider the balance of this property here, wetlands and within the 100-year floodplain. And then the northern parcel, obviously you can see the wetlands outlined in green or teal.
So it's essentially unusable for anything other than wetlands.
Yep, and that's the property owner's interest in donating it to the township, right? They're trying to keep the balance of the upland for prospective future development. Our understanding is that the marijuana provisioning center will not be proceeding on not the subject sites tonight, but these two parcels right here. So they're looking for prospective developers for the balance of the site that they would retain. And you'll see here, this is the old foundation that was poured decades ago for a prospective development that stalled for whatever reason at that time.
You said there was a former house on here or a building somewhere?
There is a house on
Oh,
43.
it's down there, okay.
Yep.
All right,
So this is the house that had a pipe
yes,
at the northeast corner. That's suggested to us that there could be a fuel tank. And that's what we're investigating through the phase 2.
but as I look at the map here, that would not be on the property we're taking.
Correct, yep. We would not be acquiring any of the land near the house. We're more or less at this point just making sure that there's no contamination that might have migrated to the
Yes,
east.
that's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Yes, trustee Wilson.
Is that house the stone house? Is this the marijuana property at 4344?
The house that you're referring to is located right here approximately where my cursor is, and then the garage to that house is here. So this is where the marijuana provisioning center was
Right.
proposed. This is just the parcel to the south that was not part of that application in any way. But there is an old farmhouse on this site.
So would you do a lot split on 4344? Is that how that would work?
Yep, we're pretty much, right now, we're waiting, the owner has agreed to this lot split right here. And we are waiting for their feedback on this lot split. They're more or less trying to determine whether or not they want this narrow sliver of upland here adjacent to the right-of-way. We could modify the line to the east if they desire to keep that. We didn't
Is that
see that it would be
buildable?
that, we didn't see a benefit from a development standpoint.
Is it even buildable?
This area right here? No, that would mostly be for pervious to impervious ratios or something like that, depending on what they were proposing.
And this whole parcel altogether is 27 acres, 2775? I think.
29.
So it is on our exhibit here. So they would be donating 10.16 acres of the northern parcel, and they would be donating 12.59 of the southern parcel.
Yeah.
I think it's in the first paragraph of my cover memorandum.
22.75.
2275. This is a substantial gift to the township, and I can see it working on a number of different levels, as you talked about. Access to pathway and that sort of thing, preserving the wetlands. To me, I just question why we wouldn't do it. Is there any drawback to this proposal?
Unless we find that there's been some form of contamination, I don't see a drawback. We're very excited about the prospect of having the trail route, the full contiguous trail route at our disposal. Obviously, these subject sites have not been developed, right? You see the foundation on the northern parcel that was poured many years ago but didn't proceed. These subject sites have been out there. No one has found a way to develop them.
Right.
Then they were put into a medical marijuana overlay district to see if that new market could find a way to develop them. That ultimately has failed as well. So there's not much prospect for development, right? So in terms of a development occurring where we could condition as a conditional approval of the development that they build part of this trail, those prospects aren't necessarily very high based on history.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Treasurer Burkhart.
If you do find contamination, who would be responsible for cleaning that up?
That would have to be a negotiation with the property owners.
Property owners, okay.
Same question. Yeah. I guess the only thing further on that is, let's say we we do find contamination and decide to move it forward with our land preservation board, I guess it's both to you and our board liaison on that board, is that something that land preservation funds could go towards that cleanup, or is that way down the way enough to where it's not even worth thinking about?
I don't know that we've had to do that before on a land acquisition for land preservation. We could check with staff to see if that's something that they've had to do in the past, but at this point in time, we'll wait for the Phase 2 ESA to come in. We're not that concerned.
Yeah.
It would have been heating fuel from the house, right? That's what we think the pipe in question was a heating fuel tank that heated the house prior to the connection to natural gas in the 50s.
I understand. And the only other question is anyone living in that old house as of now? Do you know the last time someone was residing there?
I do not know the last time it was occupied.
Okay.
I know it's not currently occupied.
Okay. I drove by it recently and after I saw this packet and was surprised. Thank you.
I'm curious about, so first of all, off-road trail is how you described the connection here. Is that asphalt through the woods? Is that a dirt trail that's, maintained? What does that actually mean?
Paved asphalt trail with a long boardwalk over the wetlands and floodplain.
Long boardwalk.
Yes, this would require a pretty lengthy boardwalk to
Okay.
construct a trail on this route and course.
Which, given our recent experiences with boardwalks, means that it's incredibly expensive.
Yes.
Okay. So the likelihood that this will actually be done as a pathway is relatively low, you would wager, in the not-too-distant future?
It depends on funding sources. So we just, for the first time this year, the federal government has begun giving metropolitan planning organizations like Tri-County an allocation of TAP grants. So the township pursued a TAP grant to help fund part of Phase 1 of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail, but that was one that we had to apply for at the federal level. This is different in that there is an allocation of funds that go straight to the MPO locally, and then we apply. So just the other week, we actually applied for this first round of MPO TAP grant allocations. So that's a prospective source of funding. The one caveat is that grants can also beget more cost. So generally speaking, TAP grants would require a minimum of a 10-foot wide boardwalk, so we wouldn't have the ability to construct, for instance, like an 8-foot wide boardwalk to reduce cost. But it would more than help pay for the construction of the boardwalk, so it would still be worth it on a net benefit. So there's funding sources out there that are new that we could explore.
Sure.
And then there's always the Ingham County Trails and Parks millage, but with this not necessarily being a regional trail, that would be a tougher sell.
So my other question is, based on the geography of what's currently listed on the township's pathway master plan, you are coming off of Sophia Parkway and is it Creekstone in the Sundance Estates, and essentially are going along the southern end of our existing uplands, and then before making a sharp turn to the north and going along through what I would assume is the middle of this parcel and up to the easement that you described that we would get from the property owner. And I can only assume, based on the current existing pathway, that the reason is because the Hagedorn pathway does not extend to where the southern parcel meets Hagedorn Road. Is that an accurate assessment?
So the Hagedorn pathway terminating where it currently does, I mean, to answer your question first, this would roughly be the route and course of the off-road trail. So
Oh,
you see the wetland layer?
okay, so I'm sorry, that's not what's listed in the packet and you're on the first page of your memo.
You're right. So the pathway master plan is conceptual, right? So the route and course is not literal. So we would take the path of least resistance across the wetland.
Got
So
it.
we would find the minimal course, right? So we have the shortest boardwalk possible.
Okay,
And we would also look at any sanitary easements that might be running through the lands, things like that, so that the trail would serve two purposes.
Here's what I would ask. Because given what you've described about the lack of ability to construct or to develop on these subject parcels that the property owners own, my ask would be, can we also get an easement for pathway down Hagedorn as a part of this process? The property owners are going to get massive benefits from the tax write-off, I'm sure, and will cost them very little to grant us an easement down Hagedorn. Now, currently, it's not worth a whole lot because all it does is get us to the south end of that parcel. But if we are ever able to get the folks in the 425 to agree, it would be nice to eventually be able to connect all the way down to Bennett Road. And when that time comes around is probably not the right time to approach these particular property owners about getting that easement on Hagedorn.
Yep.
I think it would be wise of us to attempt to do that now. Can we have that conversation with them?
Yeah, we've talked about that. It just wasn't the highest priority as we tried to navigate all this rather quickly.
Understood.
But we did talk about getting the Hagedorn Road frontage as well in case there weren't developments.
Yeah, I think if we're not taking this back up for another month and a half, it might give us enough time to take a look at that and hopefully maybe get some progress on that. I think this is the moment to do it.
Yep.
Otherwise, love it, love additional pathways. Is there, I noticed, that a lot of the Sundance and Champion Woods roads are not included in the pathway master plan. Are there existing pathways that run all the way back through that neighborhood to connect us to this potential site?
Yeah, so let me go to, let's see what Google Earth currently has for us. So they're all connected at the backs by pathway. And then once Silverleaf is fully developed, that will also connect. So the four neighborhoods, Sundance and Heron Creek being kind of one contiguous neighborhood, but two neighborhoods within one, they will all connect through the development of Silverleaf. So today, so we don't have any connection at this time. There are some off-road trails that you can see back in here. But through the development of these neighborhoods, then they will be connected. That's part of the approvals for Silverleaf was actually in order to appease I think it was the fire code, we needed another point of access here at the back. And so it's essentially an emergency access point for fire and EMS and also a pathway.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, that's helpful. It was one of those things that's like, I'm sure there's sidewalks and pathway that go back there, but it wasn't on here and,
Each one of these neighborhoods also has sidewalks, right?
Right,
Maintained
that's what I was
by
getting
owners.
at, is that there is pathway that connects to Hewlett, which connects through Sauer to Okemos and down Hewlett to Bennett. So this would be an addition that would make sense it connects to the rest of the system.
Yep.
Cool, thank you. And then the second question I had, I know that felt like more than just one. So we acquired this through the pathway acquisition. And then we take it to Land Pres or to the drain office. What happens if they're not interested?
The land was, for all intents and purposes, free to the township, and Pathway could hold it.
Okay. And so, with Land Pres comes some degree of maintenance, that, invasive species and whatnot. We would be able to fold that in even without the Land Pres's explicit accepting of that donation?
Yes, but I know the drain office would be very interested in this property. We haven't talked to them, but I know they would have a lot of interest in this property.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Other questions? Yes,
Would it
trustee
be
Wilson.
deeded to the Drain Commission?
We would do more, we would have to look at whether or not we just want to retain an easement or if we want to retain some kind of route and course or some of the land. So if a donation to the drain office was on the table, ultimately, we would have some conversations about if we're going to retain the route and course of the trail, or if we're going to donate all of it and just retain an easement for ourselves. We'll weigh the pros and
And
cons
you
of
have
that.
no doubt they would grant that easement?
Yeah, it would all be part of the transaction.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much. We'll see you in a month or so.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to agenda item 11E, a senior center update. For this, we have Manager Dempsey.
Good evening again. So, as I indicated in my cover memo, wanted to provide an update to everyone on where we stand with the senior center. If you recall, after the votes were completed for the senior and community center, which of course both failed, staff had recommended a variety of different options to the board, and we came out of that discussion deciding that the best path forward, at least initially, was to see if we could retain the $5 million state grant that we've received for community and/or senior center. Those dollars, as a reminder, are American Rescue Plan Act funds that are passed through the state to us. So like the rest of ARPA money, there's a deadline of September 30th, 2026 to fully expend them. So not just obligate, but actually have that money out the door. So it gives us a pretty tight time frame. So staff went to work, Deputy Manager Opsimer, Director Wazinski, and Director Schmidt and myself sort of worked together as a collective team to try to identify and assess some opportunities. So what I want to do this evening is just walk through what we've looked at and where we stand today. So the Community Planning and Development Department did a nice job of doing an initial assessment of looking at all of the buildings in the township that fit within the 5,000 square feet to 15,000 square foot range. By comparison, the existing senior center at Chippewa Middle School is about 9,500 square feet. So ideally, we'd be more in the 9,000 to 12,000 than on the higher end or the lower end. But nonetheless, we wanted to assess where we're at. There's actually quite a few buildings, over 170 properties fall into that size range in the township. However, most of those are occupied either as single tenant occupants or multi-tenant, whether it's office or retail space. We did look at a number of properties that were vacant. In fact, we've heard a lot from the public. This came up at the listening session about why not use some of the vacant retail locations right across from Meridian Mall on Marsh Road. As we know and was talked at the listening session, most of those are accounted for. The former Outback site, the Wheat Jewelers site, the old Chicago pizza site, all are either under contract or, in the case of Outback, already in process with demolition for that redevelopment. So a lot of those opportunities that maybe appear on the surface don't really materialize once you dig into it a little bit deeper. And then the other one sort of in that category I want to address, and I addressed this again at the listening session, as you know, but for the benefit of others who maybe weren't listening or weren't part of that session, it's important that when we think about the mall, obviously, we think about sort of the complications that come with it, right? Being in a multi-tenant facility. When the prior effort was underway to look at the community center, that what is now becoming the Ashley Home Furnishings, the former Yonker space, was looked at. One of the primary challenges was just the economics. When you look at the common area maintenance at the mall on top of lease rate, on top of a very large space, the financial numbers just did not pencil out. There are a lot of other issues with the mall, of course. If they had to combine several multi-tenant spaces together, where would that be? Would it be inline space in the mall that do not have a separate exterior entrance? That could create access and other issues. So there's really just a host of challenges there, not to mention sort of the long-term, mall plan and strategy. CBL, I think, has done a really good job with the mall relative to other similar malls in the state. When I talked to, there's actually a work group in the state of other township and city managers that have similar properties, And Meridian Mall's doing actually reasonably well compared to some other ones out there. But there are challenges there, and there are sort of long-term unknowns that make that site even more problematic. With that, though, there were a number of opportunities we did dig into rather deeply to better understand where they stood. The first one was the former Foods for Living site. This was something that we heard a lot about from the public. We did explore this property. It's 15,000 square feet with very high ceilings. So it offered a lot more space than we probably needed for a senior center only project. We did have some discussions with the owners. They did provide us with a lease rate that they would be willing to enter into potentially a long-term agreement with the township. As was mentioned before, the challenges with a lease in terms of the state dollars is that it really needs to be equivalent to ownership. So we'd have to look at least a 50-year lease, if not longer. So that creates some interesting dynamics with landlords that might not have that long of a time horizon. However, when we crunched the numbers here, it simply was not economically feasible. The per square foot rates would far exceed anything that we would look at in terms of acquisition on other properties of comparable size. So from that angle, it just didn't make sense. And the purchase option here was very complicated because of the nature of how this overall property sits with respect to its prior planning and zoning approvals. So that really limited the owners in terms of their flexibility in terms of being able to sell it. So we sort of indicated with the property owner those numbers weren't workable. They did have a prospect that they were working with as well, and it sounds like that's going to be moving forward. So hopefully there'll be a tenant announced there soon in that space. So that one is definitely off the list for us. Another site that we thought offered good potential was the former Rite Aid at Grand River Avenue and Central Park Drive, so the northwest corner. Ideal size, about 11,000 square feet, fits well. Willing seller, so we actually had some conversations. The current owners actually bought this property earlier this year out of the Rite Aid bankruptcy proceeding, and as they were going through that process. And we did have the property appraised by a commercial appraiser. They came back with numbers that we presented to the ownership group. However, they came back to us and essentially wanted about 35% more for the property than we have currently with appraised value. And the appraised value we thought was pretty reasonable because there are a ton of comps in the region and other places in the state with former Rite Aid. So it's actually an appraisal that we feel very confident in. The challenge we have there is we're using state money, state grant dollars. The flexibility to go above appraised value is really limited. So we've sort of left the door open with the owners. If they were willing to come back and look at something closer to the appraised value, then that was something that we would certainly sit down with them and have further conversations. That doesn't appear to be the case right now, but we'll see how it plays out over time. But again, we're sort of on the clock, right? We have the challenge of time. So right now, this is probably an unlikely opportunity. One site that I know that there had been conversations in the past about, but that surfaced more recently is actually the Nokomis Cultural Center. So we had a sit down with John Ostrander, the executive director of the center, and he shared that they are looking at an opportunity to move to a larger facility, potentially in the near term. However, the issue here is sort of the timing of their plans and the financial resources that they're going to need to effectuate that plan. This is an interesting site because it sits on our campus here, so there's a lot of ideals, right? The close proximity to Township Hall, the fact that we have good parking here, the tie-ins with existing uses make a lot of sense. One of the big challenges, of course, is the size of this property. The building itself is only about 4,000 square feet, so we would likely need to add to it to make it really usable for the senior center. And the other interesting dynamic here is that while the township owns the land, the Nokomis Cultural Center owns the building. So what we're doing now is we're actually proceeding with an appraisal on the building only to determine what that looks like. I think ultimately here, the challenge is likely that differential between what we will be able to offer for the building and what they're hoping to secure in funding to be able to effectuate the move. So that'll be the challenge potentially, but it is still an open door and it's an opportunity that could play out for us. It could also be an opportunity that makes more sense a little bit longer if we had a longer timeline with the grant dollars, but we'll see how that plays out. And I'll touch on that here at the end of my discussion. Of course, as we discussed at that meeting back in August, there was a lot of interest in, working with the public school districts, really, Hazlet and Okemos, of course. We know about the existing partnership with Okemos. And then it was, encouraged that we have those same discussions with Hazlet Public Schools. Both districts, their administration are very open to the idea of partnering with the township. The challenge in both cases, both with Okemos with their current construction schedule, as they're working through it, and with Hazlet in terms of where they're at with facility planning, is that these aren't really short-term options. These are more mid to long-term. And by mid-term, I'd say more in that 3 to 5 year range, and long-term would be 5 years plus. So there could be opportunities here, but in terms of being able to utilize the existing grant dollars with these opportunities, that's probably not likely in the short term. But again, both districts, I think, are open to having those conversations and working with the township. So where do we head next? So I wish I had other sites that we said, hey, we've got a bunch more that we're looking at that are available. Certainly, if anything comes up that we weren't aware of or is a surprise to us, we'll look into it. But we will proceed, as I mentioned, with the Nokomis appraisal to see where that might head. But the other thing that we're working on is extending the timeline of the grant dollars. So working with our state legislators with the potential to see if there could be some movement with the current dollars. There is the potential that maybe we could have dollars shifted from general fund to ARPA at the state level. Probably a long shot, but we're attempting it. We want to do everything we can to obviously preserve those dollars and see if we can't shift them to be able to, again, effectuate the senior center in the short term with those grant dollars. So I wish I had better news. I wish I could stand here tonight and say, we've narrowed it down to a site that we'd like to recommend to the board. Unfortunately, that's not the case, but we'll sort of maybe wait and see if the owners of Rite Aid have a change of mind in the short term, and we'll see how the Nokomis Center plays out. So with that, I'll stop and entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Board members, questions? Yes.
Thank you. I guess I'm curious if you can provide any clarity on, you say Hazlet and Okemos schools are open to partnership. What, best case scenario for the township? Do you have an idea as to what that looks like? Is it so far down the road that it's hard to say? I'm just trying to think about their buildings, how long it's clearly showing to do anything, facilitate the Okemos schools new building, which brought this on in the first place. I'm just curious if you have, best case scenario for those partnerships.
I think the best case scenario is, well, number one, let's assume we have the funding addressed, right? Because in the short term, if the dollars go away, we have to figure out a way to pay for it. Right? I don't necessarily see the school districts saying, yes, we'll, pay for the facility, so we probably have to figure that out. But let's assume that's been done. It could be either sort of new construction and current plans, like integrating ourselves into sort of facilities that are scheduled to move ahead. Certainly Okemos is further ahead of Hazlitt in terms of the planning and what they're looking to do. Hazlitt is on the front end of that, right? They're going to go through a facility study in the coming months, assess that, likely involve, the typical sort of facility process of going out to voters, et cetera. But I don't want to speak for them. So there's the potential there to do the same. There may be the potential also to look at existing space with both districts. As they reconfigure uses, as they move different programs around, there could be potential with different existing sites as well. So that, to me, could be the easier pathway versus, right, the new construction. But you're also looking at likely remodeling costs like we would with any of these sites. So not a super clear answer, but there's a lot that both of the districts, I think, are working through that we'd have to figure out how do we weave ourselves back into that process.
My second question is, extending that state of Michigan funding timeline. I know that you've let us as a board know that you're working with our representatives in the state house with their budget season being passed. Is that, how exactly does that work? Is it just they bring it forward and the entire state needs to vote on it? Is that or is it a much simpler process?
That's a great question. So it would be part of the state supplemental budget process in all likelihood, that any change would have to move through supplemental budget bills. So those are not uncommon with the state as they sort of get through the initial approved budget. But that would be the hope, that could be integrated into a supplemental approval at some point.
That's good. And in your opinion, do you, you said that it feels like that's might need some chips to fall in a way. Is that a process that, I'll actually, sorry, take that back. Rather than continued speculation
it's unwise to rely on
speculation on state issues is not something I need to get into.
No, we all know the state budget process is always complicated, right?
So you had mentioned the Hazlitt was at the early stages of this. I know that a number of members of the community have talked about the Hazlitt Community Ed Building, which is connected to the Hazlitt Library. Has that been explored at all?
Yeah, so the community ed space is one of those buildings that has come up in conversation. Certainly, there's some, I think, potential with that facility. It would meet some of the size guidelines that we're talking about. The building's sort of configured interestingly because, as you know, the Hazlitt Library is adjacent to it. So that community ed facility is actually sort of two buildings that aren't connected by an interior, well, they're connected, but it's interrupted right by the library. So it's complicated in terms of internal movement. But that could be one of those potential opportunities, right? But again, not trying to get too far ahead because the district would have to determine what they're doing in terms of relocation of existing programming, how they would manage all of that in the timeline. But certainly from a physical plant layout and its connection to the library, there are some advantages of a site like that.
If the school, let's just, understanding that they're still a ways away from doing that, is it just, if you would indulge my theoretical,
Sure.
hypothetical here, could we enter into an agreement to purchase that facility from them with the time and pay for it with a long enough tail that they have time to identify where to move a program, because, our timeline with Okemos has been extended once already. It's very possible it might be extended further. We don't know. But right now, we're still looking 3 years away, right?
Yeah.
For a facility that, if we have a facility in Hazlitt that we know we could use, knowing that it would require some amount of preparation on our part to get to a certain point, could we theoretically enter into an agreement and say, you can stay in the building until 2027, and at that point, move out?
Yeah, I think under circumstances where it's our money township dollars that we control, absolutely yes.
Okay.
Right? Under the state grant dollars, I think it's a unlikely, but a little bit of a maybe in the sense that if there was a way to structure the deal where we could use the dollars to acquire, is there a way to maybe integrate some senior center programming in the short term
Sure.
to achieve the goals of the grant, at least in that timeline, with a plan that ultimately down the road. Now, the trick becomes, what do you do with the improvement side of it? How much can you do? How much can you actually spend of the dollars to get the space and the shape that you want it in for a senior center in the short term? So, but that's not, I wouldn't rule it out completely.
As long as we're exploring all of the
Absolutely.
options, it's
Agreed.
wise to at least think about it.
Yep.
Other questions, further discussion? Clerk Demas?
So you mentioned that the Nokomis Cultural Center is looking to move, and that we were looking at potentially that space. How much would it cost to expand if we were looking to pursue that? And also, I would feel pretty sad for the cultural center to leave. Is it leaving our community, or are they looking within the township?
They, my understanding, and again, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but, what they've shared that I think I can share is that they're looking at opportunities to enhance some of their programming, particularly with school districts. And a relocation would help in part effectuate what they want to do. I don't know that they're at the point where they're able to share publicly sort of the details of where and how and all of it specifically beyond what I shared tonight. In terms of the cost, it would probably be on a per square foot basis, something similar to what we had estimated for any new construction, that $250 to $400 a square foot. In terms of the rehab side of it, a lot less expensive. Total dollar amount, I think we'd have to look at that 5 million and say, what can we do within the constraints of those grant dollars? And the constraint of time, right? Because rehabbing hopefully is going to move a little quicker. If we do a sizable addition, then we could run into time issues. So
Okay.
it does create a challenge there from a timing standpoint.
Yeah. I'm just trying to understand if it's worth looking into it. Obviously, the next steps are to look at appraisals of it, but are you still looking at other buildings within the township that was not mentioned tonight?
At this point, we've sort of vetted everything that we thought was viable. If something were to come up in the coming days or weeks that we didn't look at, that we think would now be viable versus, our current assumption that it isn't, we would certainly look at that, but unfortunately, we do not have like a good backup list here at this point. What you see is really what we've been able to narrow down, so.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we'll see you in a couple of months, and we'll hope, or unless there's some major development, and we'll hear from you at that point then.
Yes, we'll provide another quarterly update as indicated, but certainly if we get fortunate enough where we have something we can move on sooner, we'll be back to the board before then. Thank you.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. All right, that brings us to agenda item 12. It's our second opportunity for public remarks. Looks like we've got some green cards incoming.
I hand out for the board also.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so thank you to everyone for filling out new green cards. We appreciate that. Same rules apply, 3-minute time limit. If you could give us your name and address at the beginning, we'd appreciate that. First up this evening is John Leone, and then Deborah Major is on deck.
Good evening, my name's John Leone, 4544 Dobie Road. And I hear, first apologies, my issue is traffic. I fully intended to be here, and my mistake, realizing this now, this meeting started at 6 instead of 6:30. The only reason I mention that is, and I don't know if you've noticed, that I submitted something in the email. And I hope my comments are taken just as seriously as if they were delivered at the other time. So I think the traffic considerations in this matter are critically flawed. 3 reasons, even fatally flawed, and I use that word purposely. The first reason being that the traffic assessment, and this is in the record, our group that lives near there, and we don't deserve any special treatment, but we might be more familiar with the ongoing daily traffic that goes on. And the federal group has been coming since 2019 on this issue. So, and earlier on, their traffic assessment assumes there's already traffic coming out of this area. So the number that they came up with, and this again is in the record, only added so there's going to be more traffic, and this was put in the record, that even this township standard for when to do a study would be reached if you did the reality, if the reality of the situation was in front of you, that there's no traffic coming out of there now, and the assessment that was done, I believe, on behalf of the federal group, excuse me, presumed in effect that there was already traffic coming out, and only added, determined there was only assessment needed because of the smaller increase. The second reason is that it's being apparently ignored that there's 473 homes, 125, if I have the number right, 175 homes from the Grand Reserve that are already being rented out. That for reasons, I've understood the 300-foot, but the practicality is that traffic's going to hit several of the intersections, the double intersection, and the driving circle that's down Marsh, and if you, I don't know how familiar anyone sitting here spends trying to get through that area. It's already overwhelmed. The third reason that there's to me, a critical and really fatal flaw in assessing the traffic issue is that apparently by accident, I don't know, but if you have the materials I have, in 2019 when this was looked at very thoroughly, there was a list of 9 items. It's in what were the denials. Oh, I'm running out of time. So please look at that. Traffic flow and safety was mentioned in 2 different ways. And when you were informed that traffic was not an issue by Mr. Shorkey. So please reconsider this and at least put it off till, I guess you don't make a decision tonight. I don't know if I have another chance to speak, but.
Not this evening, but we'll be taking this up at our next meeting, and you're welcome to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Which I will point out, because I know there's a number of folks who are interested in this. Our next meeting is on Thursday, November 6th, because of the election, it's been moved. So, Deborah Major is up next, and then Christina Klock is on deck.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Deborah Major. I've spoken before. I'm one of the West neighbors. I live at 4570 Seneca Drive for the last 25 years. And something Mr. Schmidt said really caught my attention because he mentioned that the sub pumps of the West neighbors drained onto the Fedewa property, and that is erroneous. As far as I know where my sump pump is, and our sump pumps do not drain onto any property other than our own. There should not be ponding from our neighborhood sump pumps, as we do not drain onto the Fedewa property. We drain onto our own property. The concern that we've been bringing to is actually quite the opposite, that the Fedewa property will be draining onto our property, especially at the lower end of that neighborhood, the West neighborhood, where that drain is. And, when you think about the significant drop that is from our back of our yards to the Fedewa property, it always pools there with any kind of rain. I'm sure it ponded on Saturday night. That's just because the land is so low, not because our sump pumps are running onto that property. I'm not sure where that came from because no one's ever looked at our sump pump besides ourselves. So that's simply interesting information. The other thing, I appreciate the information about screens being brought up. The tree line behind our property is not so thick as to prevent light shining through. We've never had that situation because there's woods all the way to Dobie Road. But where the buildings will be, certainly those trees will be cut down. And then if a car is going to be driving, or 20 cars is going to be driving all the way in through that neighborhood, they're going to shine in our backyards. And so there will need to be a screen. Right now, there is no light, so we can't say. But there's not enough trees or bushes there, especially in the winter, to prevent that light pollution from entering into our homes. So I would please take that under consideration. The other thing that was mentioned is the compliance with the neighborhood. What feels not compliant to me is that we've addressed this many times with the Planning Commission and the Township Commission, and we were told on January 13th that these buildings would be 2 stories. And so what is not compliant now is the prospect of some of them being 3-story buildings and some of them being 2 stories. And at the last meeting, it was brought up, well, they had to do that because of the drainage ditches and so forth. But on January 13th, it was agreed that, by everyone, that they would be 2-story buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Christina Clark, and then Bradley Shaw is on deck.
Christina Clark, I am going to be super quick. I just want to tell you that based on my conversations with the Drain Commissioner's office, they prefer and they want to be brought into the process as early as possible. So I certainly think it would be worth the effort for the township to reach out to the Drain Commissioner's office. I don't see a downside involving them in the process now. If you can put the issues to rest now, why not? Thank you.
Thank you. Bradley Shaw, and that's the last green card I have. If anyone else would like to speak to the Township Board, please fill out a green card and get it to a member of our township staff now, if you would. Mr. Shaw.
Regarding the resolution in your packet for the Dobie Road SUP, I want to offer the board a few suggestions for questions next month. Number 1, the subject property was conditionally rezoned for 2 years from the date of rezoning. Shouldn't the timeline be compatible with the timeline in the resolution? Number 2, staff reports state that the majority of the property is consistent with the master plan and future land use map. Yet the resolution implies that it is all consistent. How can both of these statements be true at the same time? Why is the resolution different from the staff report? Why is the board being asked to accept a resolution if it is misrepresenting reality? Number 3, given the staff report correctly includes the new church driveway, why are there only residential ordinances included in the resolution? Number 4, the project does include a church drive defined as a public right-of-way on private property and zoned RD. What ordinance applies for this portion of the project? What Meridian Township ordinance will govern this drive? Why is such an ordinance not in the resolution? Number 5, the developer has permanently relinquished development rights to the land for the church drive. So what has the staff calculated as the buildable acreage per code? What is the correct frontage for the residential portion of the project? Number 6, the developer verbally represents that the western half of the site will be filled. With a 10-foot drop in elevation from Dobie Road, how will a roughly 10-foot height differential be handled between the development and the church property and the development in the natural untouched area to the west? Wouldn't this require substantial infrastructure like retaining walls, big enough even to support a Meridian Township fire engine? Number 8, the SUP application form is very clear that the proposed contours of the property are required and must be submitted with the application. Without these contours and depictions of the proposed structures envisioned to deal with the elevation changes, how can staff consider the site plan acceptable for the SUP? Number 9, the CATA bus station on the subject property is also a school bus stop, with children crossing Dobie Road in front of the subject property. Has staff considered any safety issues related to these children? Finally, can the Meridian Township Board recommend that the Ingham County Road Department hold public hearings to address public safety concerns on Dobie Road? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We did receive one additional card from Jerry Fedewa.
Good evening again. I will be brief. I just wanted to address a couple of the issues. To the west of the property, this particular parcel drops off 8 feet. We have the gradients of the elevations, but from the front of the property to the back of the property, there's maybe an 8 foot, 9 foot drop all the way to the back. And so the neighbors had asked that, we not disturb that area. So our building starts over 100 feet from the western properties. Now, to address the height of the buildings that you probably have observed over in Chief Oakham Circle is the building that is the 3-story building, and it's approximately 33 feet tall. Now, we've mentioned that the 3-story buildings are all the way to the front. Are they just in the 2 buildings? I don't have that in front of me, and I don't know if that you understand what I'm saying. But the 2 buildings that are all the way to the front are 350 feet away from the west property line. Now, when you get the 2-story buildings built, you cannot see from the backyards that additional 8 foot of building. You cannot see that. You will not be able to see that. Why did we do that? Because they didn't want the detention all the way to the west side. If you put the detention all the way to the west, you have to remove all the trees. So we moved everything. We brought the detention all the way to the front of the buildings. And thus, because those 2 buildings in the front have a much smaller footprint. Well, the way for us to achieve that, what we're trying to achieve, is to make those 3-story buildings. And it's 8 foot in the basement, it's 9 foot on the first, and it's 8 foot on the second, and a 612 roof pitch. Brings you to about a total of 33 feet. Now, if you were to calculate, if you're standing in those backyards, you will never see the 3-story building. You just can't see them because your vision is obstructed. So we figured, that's the way that we resolved our issue with not cutting all the trees in the back to put detention in. And there was one other point, what was that point I was trying to make? I guess slipped in one ear out the other. Guess I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. We did receive one additional card from David Fidowa.
Thank you so much. David Fidowa, 278 Hazlitt Road. I just had 2 quick points. We did actually already submit to the drain office, but we did not get any response from them. We do like to start the conversation early so we can get their input, but have not heard back from them. And second, we've already established with the Faith Lutheran Church an easement for the storm. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Last call for green cards.
I submitted one previously. Do you want me to submit another one?
That's fine. I've got you up here. 8 o'clock.
Yes. I got you. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, just real quick, I'll make one quick comment and I thank Mr. Schmidt for making that comment about the topography of the land. Again, when the township engineer is saying the western half of that site is going to be filled. And what that's going to mean is if our water right now drains to the east, our sub pump drains to the Sprouse drain. It does not drain towards the east. We're not part of the Daniels drain. So anything that comes onto our property in the past, anything that's come onto our property in the past, I don't think has drifted east. I think it's gone with the flow of Seneca, which is towards our house. And it's flowed to this Sprouse drain. It has not gone towards the Daniels drain. So I don't know if our land is technically higher, topography speaking, based on living there for 25 years and knowing where our water drains. So again, the issue of filling the western half of that, putting water into our backyards, and water from our backyards not being able to flow. That's my big concern. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board? I'm sorry, you've already addressed the board this evening. Anyone else at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed at 7:49 PM. All right, next up is other matters and board member comments. Any other matters and board member comments this evening? I would ask Director Schmidt, before we close out, if you would take a look at the zero-based assumption for traffic impact. That actually is something that we probably should at least talk about at the next meeting, since there is nothing on the subject property currently. I understand that it was meant to compare the previous zoning to the current zoning, but how does that come about, and, is it something that needs to be addressed? Would be helpful. Thank you. Any other matters and board member comments? Seeing none, item 14 on our agenda is a closed session. Do we have a motion to enter closed session this evening? Actually, we do need to read it in full if you would, off the agenda.
I would ask that
Trustee Lance.
we take a short break.
We'll do that as we enter, if you would.
Let's come on.
Trustee Trezise.
I move to enter in closed session under MCL 15.268, paren 1, close paren H, close paren, to consult with township attorney regarding a confidential written legal opinion.
Support.
It's been moved by Trustee Trezise, supported by Trustee Wilson. Clerk Demas, will you please call the roll?
Treasurer Burkhart?
Yes.
Trustee Lentz?
Yes.
Trustee Sunland?
Yes.
Trustee Trezise?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson?
Yes.
Clerk Demas, yes. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we will ask to clear the room, please, as we enter closed session. The only thing on our agenda after this is adjournment, so you're welcome to stick around if you like outside in the lobby, but you might be disappointed. And then board members, we'll take a 5-minute break as we go ahead and clear the room and get it set for closed session. Usually we had a primer.
Mics are on.
So let's move to open session, please.
Move to open our closed session.
To enter into open session. Okay, it's
Enter into open session, sorry.
been moved by trustee Wilson, supported by trustee Lentz. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We move into open session. And we'll reconvene at 8:29 PM. All right, we have a motion from trustee Trezise.
Yes. After consultation with council, I move to approve a settlement in the amount of $10,000 to settle a complaint filed against Meridian.
Supported by trustee Wilson. Clerk Demus, will you please call the roll?
Trustee Lentz.
Yes.
Trustee Sunland.
Yes.
Trustee Trezise.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Supervisor Hendrickson.
Yes.
Clerk Demus, yes. Treasurer Burkhart.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you very much. Next on our agenda is item 15, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Moved by trustee Lentz. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by treasurer Burkhart. All those in favor of adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We stand adjourned at 8:30 PM.